Good morning, dear ones. Good morning. When I was invited by Neil to give the talk and play some music, I was deeply honored. I always am to be before you. And I started working immediately, extracting ideas from my journal. And I had several working titles. One was Try and Bicycles of Life. Tricycles and Bicycles of Life. That was something. Well, then I got another title, Old Friends, consisting of books, people, and tools that we return to for becoming reacquainted. Okay, that was okay. Then another title I had, and this one was To Inner Space, to Outer Space, and Back Again. Well, okay, how do you bring all of that together? Don't ask me, I don't know. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Well, the adaptability of human beings has always fascinated me because on my long career and careers, I have adapted. I have enjoyed not thinking of retirement. I can't retire because I'm enjoying what I do too much. I've been semi-retired for my whole life. So it looks as though I'm going to be continuing that, combining the interests I have to put a little food in the refrigerator. So that's where I'm going with the talk this morning. And we're such a long-lasting species on this planet. And yet we're always, it seems, every century, there comes a time when people are saying we're on the brink. We're on the brink of another phase of existence. There's something else on the horizon. What are we going to do today to perpetuate what we love? That's a normal thing, it seems. And those of us who've lived long enough are going to see that we will just adapt. We will be taking things in stride. We will be making the adjustments, and we're going to last another century or more. And if changes happen, it will be because of the bigger wave of humanity that requires those changes. So we're all going to be speaking and thinking and doing what we can to make our voices known in order to last, to adapt, to adjust. So, with this race of humanity, it's only about 6 million years or so. And I say only because the bigger scheme of things shows a galaxy. We are on the outer edge of a galaxy that we've nicknamed the Milky Way. And it takes about 230 million years for that galaxy to rotate once. And so in this 6 million years, that's less than 3% of that rotation. So if we look at the cycle of life, what do we look at as cycles? We have a 24-hour cycle. We have a 365-day cycle. And then we have decades and centuries and cycles that we can really feel and recognize. But the cycle of the movement of this galaxy, I don't understand it. I can't feel that. So I'm awed by that. So the idea of the cycles is always going to be with us. We're trying to get to understand the bigger cycles. I love that concept. So, as you know, one of my main fields is music. It's something that I have loved since my earliest memories. My first musical instrument was the accordion, which has a logical system built into it that carried me forward through all of my other instruments. And therein lies another cycle, the cycle of vibration, the idea that objects are moving back and forth. And when they go fast enough, we get a musical sound. So that back and forth nature is audible in a musical instrument. So anything that vibrates from 7 cycles per second up to about 13,000 and a little bit more cycles per second, that is heard by the human ear. Slower than that or faster than that will not be audible. So although the universe, the celestial environment has its movement back and forth, orbits, we don't hear those because they're too slow. But they're in the same family of sound, even though it isn't audible. Light also, far beyond the audible spectrum. We have many millions of vibrations per second, and that becomes visible. So all of this is to set the stage of adaptability. Another subject I had was always have a plan B. There's always a solution. There is always a direction to go with a plan B. And that is a big deal too, because adaptability in my fields, I have learned how to adjust and to make changes and incorporate other bodies of knowledge because they are useful. All of us have this already. I know that some of you have had the blessings of possibly one long career where you've been able to last and to adjust within one subject area. I deeply honor that. I was not able to do that. And I recognize that inability with me. But I bring other gifts, and we all do. And this plan B, when we are hoping or praying for something, maybe the answer appears to be no. But there is always an alternative answer for a real solution. So maybe the answer is no, just in the short term, but looking beyond no. As you know, in sales, we've all had to be in sales at one time or another because of the way we've marketed ourselves. That is sales. Applying for another position is sales. And so the alternative is to sell something different, to look at the qualities of what we are doing and see how they can be adaptable. So in your own vast backgrounds, you're being fed ideas all the time. Now, the constant review that we have is going on right now. There's review of survival. And that is one of the specialties I had in the Army. I'm always looking back at that. And I'm going to share some of that because it has helped me enormously. And when I'm doing this, giving this talk, I don't want it to appear that I am saying me, although I am. But I'm also inviting people to look at the bigger picture, to say you, which becomes me. So there's a flip side there. That's your plan B, to say me. So the reviewing interest in the indigenous people of the world is something that's been ongoing, especially now because there are changes in the environment that most people now will realize must be made. We have to recognize the changes and to see within ourselves what we can do to overcome the negatives, the negative possibilities that we want to avoid, turning them into positives. So I had the good fortune of having several survival programs when I was in the U.S. Army. And one of the schools was called SERE School, S-E-R-E, and the initials for that stand for survival, evasion. That means, well, survival is living off the land, making do with what you have. And evasion meant staying out of the hands of an enemy. Resistance, if you're captured, how to resist the enemy's attempts to exploit a prisoner of war for propaganda purposes. And then escape is the second, or the fourth E, the second E. So survival, evasion, resistance, escape. And that was a tremendously valuable set of skills. And I appreciated it enormously for the adaptability that it presented to us. So among the survival skills, the program emphasized the survival part and the evasion part, because then you don't have to worry about the resisting and the escaping part. So looking at the earliest preparation that you can make. That is a key, not only to survival in a wilderness area. And I've had active programs in the temperate realm, in Arctic, in the jungle environment. I did not do active training in a desert environment, but that is another area that I'm interested in. But in learning about survival, we look at the indigenous people of the world. And in our continent here, we have Native Americans. There's a richness there that is untapped, and we have to learn more about the very basic ideas. And you yourselves, in adapting, maybe it's indigenous survival skills, but also you, what can you control? Well, everything at the end of your arms, that environment right now, or all your tools, all the physical tools that you have, from which you can adapt. So one of the areas that we studied was about fishing, the sea life. And we have to take care of that sea life. You know that if the plankton dies, the whole planet is going to die. Not a pleasant thought. So we have to do what we can to preserve the oceans. In the island nation of Palau in the Pacific, Palau is a small island. They are basically at sea level, So if the oceans rise even an inch, that nation is going to go under, literally. It's not a great thought. Well, do you know how they fish? Some of the island people fish by getting their hook, getting their bait out into the surf and past the surf. And I'll describe how they do that. It's an intriguing idea because it involves several crafts. The indigenous person goes to the forest and he gets a little stick and he carves it into roughly the shape of a small fish, maybe a sardine. And then he or she looks for a spider web. Now you have spider webs glisten in the sun, they reflect light, and the fisher will wind the web around this little stick to make it look like a glossy sardine. Maybe it'll take several webs and they roll it around until this little stick shaped like a sardine looks like a sardine, as in yum yum. Well, they take that lure, it has a hook on it, or they'll make a hook out of bone. Now they are in modern times able to buy fish hooks and trade for them. And so they have money, they can buy some. So they've made this lure with a sardine, a stick wrapped in spider web material. And of course, the spider web is capturing air too when they're winding it around. Now they make a kite. You know what a kite is. Get some sticks and they get some paper and they make a kite that will float the lure out over the sea. So the fish lure is hanging down and they make the lure go down into the ocean and they float it up again. And they use the kite to make the kite dip into the ocean and come up again. And with that motion, they are going to get fish. So what do you think of that? So the island nation, they get food by using their materials. What are the things that they have in their environment? And we have that also, we have that. Not only do we have our computers, but I have an old typewriter that I use to write in my journal sometimes because it gives me a different flow of my thoughts to type or to use my calligraphy. And it gives me a way of seeing the world a little bit differently. So those are the island people of Palau. Now, on my other computer, I have a photo essay that I was going to present. I'm not able to do that now. But another thing is the engines. What are the power sources that indigenous people have? They have sunlight, and therefore they have evaporation. And evaporation is used to produce fresh water from salt water. Some of you will know about this. And if you do not, you can look up these techniques for yourselves too. But Solar power, that is in a very elementary way available to all indigenous people. Another power engine is gravity. Water moving downhill, counterweights and balances, wedges and inclined planes. These are very early devices or inventions that give us the power of gravity. Well, one of those was the bird snare made by the Ojibwe people. And this is one of the things I taught people how to make. How do you catch a bird? Well, you put a stake in the ground that will resist the weight of a bird. You stick a stick in the ground, and then you have a little hole in there, and you make a stick that will wedge into the hole. And then through that hole also, with this knot, is a loop draped over the stick. And at the point of the top of the stick, at the point there, you put a little bird bait, maybe some suet, animal fat, or maybe a little piece of meat that's softened up, or berries, who knows, something that birds like. So what happens is that the bird alights on the stick, and his talons, his legs, are in the midst of that loop of string. Now, when he alights to eat that bait at the top of the stake, the stick falls out and the string pulls his feet up against the wedge, and a rock on the other side. A rock pulls the loop down and taut, so that now the bird's feet are caught, held there by gravity, which is pulling down on the rock. Are you with me? Keep your hands down if you're with me. Oh, good. Thank you, Leon. So there you have the primitive engines of gravity and the surf and sun and wind. They're used by indigenous people to procure food. Also to dry animal skins, you have sun and evaporation. Also, there was the hair in the air snare, H-A-R-E, hair. And the hair in the air snare, I got the idea, it's all over the world really, but I got this at the Canadian Forces Survival School. The Canadians have their schools too. I was one of 4 Americans to be able to go to that school. The hair in the air snare uses a long branch. It's on a fulcrum. And on the ground, you look for the lair of a rabbit. And you can tell because they like thickets, and there will be a path. They're creatures of habit, so they will wear a little path in the ground. And you set up a loop. I won't go into the whole thing, but the loop is set up so that when the hare goes into the loop, his head gets caught, and then it triggers the release of the loop, and then the branch weighs down and pulls him up in the air. So the hare is in the air, lifted by your snare. I don't care. I'm just using an excuse for wordplay here. So what do we have so far? I've given us 3 images of procuring food in the local environment where you are. Now that's wilderness stuff. What does it mean to us here in the urban environment? This is basically urbanity with all of its insanity. But don't get in the way of vanity. You with me? Well, now, you have your environmental things too. You have the ideas of a resume, which you can teach to others. Now, you can see by my wizened appearance that I'm beyond a career search at this time. But I have a number of young people who get to meet me, and they want to know how I've done things. And that is so flattering and so wonderful for people in my age group, maybe your age groups too, to be able to answer questions, because we live by life given to us through our ideas. And so they want to know, how did I do this or that in my life? How did I survive this or that? And that brings me to an acronym that everyone can use for adaptation. So with your life skills that you've attained in your local environment, you have your computer, you have your pencil, you have your speech, and in modern technology, we have all of these tools for putting down our ideas. Zach knows about this also. He's a writer. And all of us have the ability to get our ideas down into some form. And I'm learning about speech recognition technology. So I'm doing a lot of journaling and writing with the speech recognition. And that's an enormous progression from what we used to do. As with some of you, I came up through high school using a typewriter and cutting apart the paragraphs and rearranging them and then retyping. And the strength of my paper was dependent on how many times I was willing to retype. Now you can do a paper of even a longer length that's 3 times as good because you have editing tools. That has been survival, humanity devising new ways of using our knowledge to give us new methods. So here is an acronym that you can remember. It's a pretty easy thing. Now I will forward this to anyone who asks. You know how to get my email address. And the acronym is the word survival, S-U-R-V-I-V-A-L, survival. Now, each of those letters gives us a tool. The first S, the S in the beginning, S, size up the situation. So what is the situation? What is yours? What are you trying to overcome? What will you be overcoming with your own skills, your own intellect? So what is that situation? And you have who, what, when, where, why. The journalist's key words. So sizing up the situation. Now the next letter in survival, the letter U. Undue haste makes waste. Now, I know some of the key words here are later in the sentence, but if we make haste, sometimes we miss out on certain details that could be very important. As I'm improvising this talk for you this morning, I'm also slowing down sometimes so I can say something that's coherent instead of skipping around too much. So I'm not making haste. I'm sort of taking my mind, taking my time with my own mind so that words will come more easily and it'll be easy for you. So undue haste makes waste. The third letter is the letter R, survival. R is remember where you are. Now, in a survival situation in the wilderness, that becomes very important because if you are, say, in the woods or in the jungle or even in the mountains, one peak or one tree starts to look a lot like the others. So you don't move very far until you really will be able to remember the identity of the local environment. What are the sources for water and trees? Did I come across this tree from the other side? Well, if you keep track of where you are, remember where you are, then it will not be a big problem for you. Then it's been S-U-R-V. Now the first V, there are 2 V's in the word survival. So value living, value living. You have to remember that your life is valuable. You have influence over other people by staying alive. You don't want to lose track of that. I remember many years ago when I was out of my first tour in the Army. I was in 2 different times. I know I'm a crazy man. You know this about me already. Well, I moved to New York City. I was from New York City anyway. But when I got out of my Army experience the first time, I moved to the city and I couldn't get an apartment right away. I sublet another person's apartment. And this was the kind of apartment where you open the kitchen cabinet door and roaches fall on your head. That was the level of this. But it was okay with me because it was a place. It was a place. It was a survival situation. And I valued my upcoming life. I wanted to go to a conservatory in Manhattan, so I needed to live pretty close. And gradually I made it. Why? Because I had the will, as all of you have experienced. You've been in situations too where you had to value living enough to make a go of your circumstances. Well, the next letter in survival is the letter I. So we've had SURVI now, and I stands for improvise. Improvise. Now we've all had to improvise at some time or another. It simply means using objects for purposes other than for what they were originally intended. So what do you have? You have pencils around, you have pens, you have computer, you have wire, you have improvised objects that are all kinds of materials around. When you start experimenting, you're learning about the behavior of materials. And I'm going to show you something else now with this improvisation set of skills. It's an enormously unlimited thing. I'm going to show you something here. I happen to like to cook with olive oil, you know. And this, now I'm not advertising the brand, but this is Pompeian olive oil. Wow. Extra virgin. Oh my goodness. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up to the screen is that on this bottle, let me see if I can show it to you. On the bottle is a little tree. You see that circle? It has a little tree in it. Why is that important? It's not. Unless you play the guitar or a mandolin, and unless you know about David Grisman, who says, use a circular pick. When you pluck the strings, a circular pick gives you a wide range of sounds. So not only can you use a triangular pick, this one has an eye on it. So here's looking at you, kid. Well, that's a triangular pick, very common. Well, David Grisman, with his idea, I said to myself, hey, I can cut the tree symbols out of the bottle. Every bottle gives you 2 trees. Holy moly, green plastic. So I cut them using this punch. You can buy these things. This punches a circular pick shape. It's like a stapler, but it punches a circle out. You can see that somewhat there. And you can see, so I save the bottles and I punch out these, oh, so fashionable picks made of plastic. And I take the edge and I finish it down. Why is that important? It's not. But to improvise this makes me feel a little bit special. Nobody has picks like this unless they have also improvised from a bottle of, oh yes, Pompeian olive oil. I don't put it in my mustache. I know you think I do, but I do not. But anyway, that's a little case of improvisation. And I'm doing this all the time. You know, I got a tree branch and I made a music stand from it. Some of you remember this from my appearances at the facility, at the center, when we had group meetings, in-person meetings. But the point being is that everything is a treasure to you. And maybe you don't think you're making a whole lot of money right now, but I am not. I'm certainly not. But I have other tools. So I save a lot by improvising. So there's your brief introduction to some of the things I do for improvisation. Now, the next letter is the second V in the word survival. So we've had SURVI. Now, the second V, vanquish fear and panic. Now, that's an idea. You know, in air travel, there is a lot of anxiety. That's why they play such delicious, creamy music in the airports and in the airplane. They want to lull you into a state of, not lethargy, I won't say that, but calmness. They want us to be calm, because the worst thing to do is to become fearful and to panic, because then we make bad decisions. So the idea is to look at what you're afraid of and consider it and feel this fear until it feels good to you. Now, once an old friend of mine and I had to do a little task up on his roof. He does not like heights at all. He does not. He's afraid of heights. A lot of people are. I knew some guys in the airborne who joined because they were afraid of heights and they wanted to do some jumping out of airplanes. Yes, perfectly good airplanes, because they wanted to conquer that fear of height. So I said to my friend, we were up on his roof. We were tied in around the chimney. So, nobody was going to fall and hurt themselves from the roof, but he was still afraid. So I said, okay, let's calm down here. Let's just look around. We have the rope. This is what we can control. This is a tool within our reach of which we can take control. So I said, we're secure. Even if you trip over your feet, you're still going to fall only to the end of the rope. The rope is strong, the chimney is strong, so we're secure here. So let's take a couple of deep breaths and appreciate this potentially stressful situation, but as something that's friendly. So now we're appreciating the air, there's fresh air up on the roof. We look around, we see some views of the horizon that we did not see from the ground. This is powerful. Knowledge of the surroundings. Knowledge is power. We've all heard this many times. So vanquishing fear and panic is going to help us make better decisions. So then the next letter, the A, we've had S-U-R-V-I-V, A now. The A stands for act like the natives. Act like the natives. So not only in a wilderness situation is it possible to act like the natives. I knew a guy, now I did not have the Vietnam experience. I honor people who have, but in my training, we knew people, we were introduced to people who had used unusual methods to get out of their dangerous situations. So we met one guy who was fairly small, and he just took off his clothes. He went down to his underwear, and he colored his underwear up with mud and vegetation, and he was able to roam through some villages in Vietnam by looking like the natives. He didn't know the language, but he was able to blend in enough that he wasn't quite ignored, but he wasn't put upon. He wasn't set upon because he was able to act like the natives. So now in a new situation, we have similar ideas. When you go into DC, if you do, or any big city, maybe you don't know the area very well, but you want to act as though you're part of the environment. So you walk with a purpose. You don't ogle the buildings too much, because that makes you look a little bit strange and out of place. So you become part of that environment. When you're in a new workplace, same idea. Just pull your shoulders back, appreciate your environment. In a supermarket or somewhere that you're not familiar with, you look around and you watch other people too. You want to see who is around you, and you become adapted to your situation. Whether it's an unfamiliar store or an unfamiliar neighborhood or an unfamiliar environment outside of your belief system, outside of your environment, means also maybe a different belief system, as in religions. One of my hobbies, I haven't indulged for a while, but one of the things I like to do is go to a new church where I don't know anyone. And I've been to, of course, Science of Mind and Unity, but also outside of Christianity. The Baha'i faith, they have a nice situation going on. Buddhist temples, Hindu. And I just look around and I see how it is. How are they doing things? How does it feel if I genuflect their way? How does it feel if I say a few prayers that they are saying? How does it feel? How does it feel to get rid of my uncertainty? I won't say fear and panic, but your uncertainty. You can use that to adapt. And then the last letter of the word survival, we've had S-U-R-V-I-V-A, and then L is the last letter. Learn new skills. And that is something that everyone can do anytime. I'm a big collector of books. If you ask my dear wife, she would say I am an accumulator of books, not so much a collector. But a lot of times I will pick up a book and I'll see that it has a lot of common material in it, and it is a redundant item from my library. But I look through it anyway, and behind me over my shoulder here, I have this many books on the history of music, and there are many others too. For 200 bucks, I got the Encyclopedia of Religion. It's on the other side of the wall. And I got it very cheaply for just 200 bucks. But the new edition, which it superseded, is about $1,500. I can't afford that. But I got an old one from a library cast-off. It was a library cast-off. So I got that. And now the demographics have changed a little bit, but the histories have not changed. So some things are very, very worthwhile when you look around and going through that set of letters, learn new skills. This is an enormously important idea. We never stop learning. And I hope you don't think you've stopped learning, because it's an adventure. It's another adventure. So the word survival. So I'm coming to a close pretty soon here. I know you're hoping, yes. Well, this is this is now the operations order. You know, as an NCO, as a non-commissioned officer, I had to learn how to manage small unit tactics. So I'm going to give you the 5 paragraphs of an operation order. Now, this is 5 subjects. I'm not going to go through it very, very much in detail, but I'll forward it to this, forward you this outline. The 5 paragraphs are the situation, the mission, execution of the operation, the administration and logistics, and command and signal. You know, how are you going to signal the guys around you to do what you want them to do? You know, how are you going to start out? You have to know what the mission is, you know, what the situation is. Okay, what do we want the guys to do? And then once we get there, how are we going to do it? You know, who's going to do what? Now, if you follow this outline, you can adapt this to any management situation in the world, these 5 paragraphs. They will be available to you because it is a skeleton of a system to get the job done. Another valuable thing I got with my Army training was how to conduct training. Now, here are 3 words. Maybe you don't think of yourself as a trainer. Maybe you don't like being up in front of groups of people. You know, that is the #1 fear. There was a book of lists. I don't know if they still publish it, but the top 10 fears that people have on the list that I saw, the #1 fear was standing in front of a group and speaking. Wow. Now, I have fears too, but I don't have the same fears that other people have. That happens to be a nice thing for me. I like standing up in front of people and speaking, because it's a chance to share. It's a chance to be a nobody who has something to give. That's the way I figure it. Well, here are 3 words to remember about being a trainer, being a teacher. Task, conditions, standard. Now, those 3 words are headings of a group of skills. So the task, what is it that you want to teach? What is it that you want your people to be able to do? That's the task. Make a bird snare, set up an office space, set up a new franchise. That's the task, okay? The conditions, that's the second word, the conditions. What are the things given in the situation? What do they have to work with? So what do they have? Office furniture, raw materials, energy sources. Is the current in the new building turned on yet? If not, what are the alternatives? What can we improvise? So the conditions. What are the tools that the group will have to work with to accomplish the tasks? Then the third word is the standard. How well do you want them to do this? What are the levels at which they must be achieving their abilities to achieve the tasks? So your task, the conditions, the standard. What do you want them to do? How well do they have to do it? Or rather, What do they have to do? What are the conditions they are given to achieve the tasks? And then how well do you want them to do it? What are the standards they must meet in order to show the success? So here I've given you some outline material upon which you can build to achieve a lot of goals, to adapt to the new environment that you're looking at here. Some of us might be thinking about retirement community. I don't know what it is, a new environment, but all of the things I've spoken of here can be adapted, I believe, to achieve your new situation. So now I've taken up a lot of time here. I hope it's been interesting and valuable to you. And I'll conclude my talk by saying, you never stop learning. Let's keep going. And we'll use the acronyms for more success in the future. So thank you for appreciating this. I love you. You have no idea. I love you. So Neil, I will turn this over to you. How are we doing, my friend?